basically, I've been a high-tech guy most of my life, and primarily started out in sales, then marketing, then general management, and I got to be CEO of three different companies, all relatively small, but mostly featured on high tech. First big job that I had was with IBM. I started with them in Philadelphia. I was sales. I got promoted a couple times, ended up in New York City working for them. And I was with them for about 7 years, from in the early to late 60s. So you can see by my picture, I'm an old fart, so I've been around the horn a couple times. Then I joined a startup company called Inforex, and it was one of the first venture capital. This was in the late 60s, venture capital companies, and it was basically a data entry company. And I had every job known to man. I started out in managing sales in the New York City area, became regional manager, then national sales manager, then director of marketing, then director of international operations. We went from zero revenue to about 75 million over about 6 or 7 years. We went public and did quite well. From there.
Well, stop there for a sec. So
yes.
You wore a ton of different hats.
Yes.
You know, I guess like really help people understand like really what you're doing. Okay, you're doing marketing at one point, you're doing management, you're doing this, doing that. How did you grow the company from 0 to 75 million? Just curious.
Well, it was a product that was innovative. If you're too young to remember key punches, but back then most data entry was done by key punches with young women usually keying in like on a typewriter keyboard, and the cards would then go into the computer. Later on, about 10 years after that, it went to online, which we still do today. But in the interim, we did something called key to tape. And when the key punch operators basically keyed right into tape, the tape was moved over to the computer. And so it was innovative, it was very cost effective, the ROI was great, and that's why we went from 0 to 75 million in about 6 years or so. So it just happened to be a new thing that really sparkled. We had great leadership in the company. Two West Point guys were running it, and it was a very hot success in terms of good success. I actually got a taste. I came from a very modest family. I asked my boss if he would give me a chance to buy some stock when we went public. And he got me 1,000 shares at $8 a share. I didn't have anywhere close to $8,000 as a young kid to put in, but I borrowed it and somehow got it. And that turned into, within a year and a half, into several $100,000. And so I got my first taste of a small company going public.
That's awesome. That's a pretty good success as a kid. No complaints.
I pinched myself. I bought a Corvette and I was driving up to the work every day. I pinched myself every morning and said, this cannot be me, because I did come from a fairly humble background. Well, the story gets better. I was recruited to a company called Paradigm. Paradigm was a high-tech company, mostly in communications in Florida. And I moved down there as vice president of sales and marketing. And again, we were doing about 4.5 million when I went there. And 4 years later, we were at 125 million. And we were the highest PE ratio in the New York Stock Exchange for the last quarter that I was there. So it was just a barn burner success. They promoted me the senior VP, strategic operations, and a couple other things. And one of the highlights of my life was I had a boss who had introduced me to the Harvard's AMP program, the Advanced Management Program, a 3-month deal. And I begged him to send me to that course. He did. So I went to that course, and we were just rocking at the time. And I came back and I quit, and he was not happy. The only reason I left is because my boss was really good and he didn't want to move over, and I was next in line to be the CEO. And so, and he was so good to me and allowed me to make mistakes and grow up. But we were a really good success. And so I ended up going high tech, no tech. I bought a company that refurbished used axles for the mobile home industry. So it was, and I really learned a lot in that time because I was working with, our staff was pretty small. It was about a $5 million company, but I was lucky. I got it up to 10 million right away and sold it for a really nice profit. But I was working with people who smoked funny cigarettes, who had been in jail, and the motivation going from motivating $100,000 a year sales guys to, I don't know what it was, $7.29 minimum wage guys was just a real upbringing. So that was fun. I sold it a year. I didn't like it because there were a lot of weapons on the place and just a lot of stuff that I didn't like, but it turned out to be a pretty neat success. From there, I went out to, when I made the money, I tried for about a year to be a private equity guy, just using my own funds because I'd made a six-figure or seven-figure profit in the year that I had the axle company. And I basically failed at that. I thought I was smart, I thought I could do it, but I made some investments. I made one in the Anadarko oil basin, and I put in a couple $100,000. The bank came back because it was highly leveraged and said, "You owe us $1 million." And so I had some pretty good lessons from that area. From there, I went out to a company on the West Coast called Dulles Networks, and I served there as a senior VP. I served on the board. And then after that, I ran a division for Harris Corporation in the West Coast, again, a high-tech company. Then I joined a company called Cortex as EVP. And again, I switched from that point. I went from hardware most of my life in the high-tech area to software. And Cortex was a good ride. My next job, and I'll just go through and you're welcome to jump back. There was a company called Amnet up in the Boston area. It was my first CEO job. And I took that from a company that was really in trouble and got it profitable and got it sold. Then had a couple other jobs. I've been CEO of 3 different companies. One of the interesting ones was a company called Unitron Medical Systems, and it was basically a forerunner of telehealth, but it was early and I couldn't move it. We ended up, my parent, which owned 100% of us, was a Chicago-based firm, and they went bankrupt and took us bankrupt. So I had a taste of how to get out of bankruptcy in my career. And then since then, I was CEO of a company that was in the internet space. It was called Lightport, and what we did was communicate major funds. We had multi-billion-dollar management funds, and we connected them with their key investors through the internet. And it was quite new, and that did quite well as CEO. It was in trouble when I got there. I did a 10-year stint with a West Coast firm called Village eDocs, and I was basically a senior officer on the board, and I did mergers and acquisitions with them, and did about 1 deal a year, either buying or selling a company for 10 years. When we sold the last one, I kind of slowed down a little bit, but I was asked to be interim chief exec of a software company for hospice. We supplied all the larger hospices in the country. We supplied them with the software. Since then, so Village eDocs is key in terms of Holiday Island.
Well, here, wait a sec. We'll get to that in a second. I mean, first off, holy smokes, is there a lot there? Wow, do you have an insane background, to, me hearing it for the first time. Sounds like you've got a ton of experience taking companies, from kind of small stage to, call them whatever, medium size, even large size in some cases, and being acquired. It's pretty amazing. Not only you've done it, you haven't just done it once, you've done it multiple times. So that's fantastic. And I'm sure what a lot of people love to hear. I guess, I mean, you're about to go into it. Tell me how you go from all of this, and also in saying many different industries. A lot of people say, oh, I've stayed in tech. You're refurbishing axles. I think that's pretty awesome. A little curveball.
That was definitely a curveball.